going on, guys? What up, Eric? So, I got the Facebook Live going, and we got some things to talk about. Again, for you guys on Facebook listening, I want to go over an announcement and say that on Tuesday at 12 Eastern Time, 11 o'clock Central Time, I will be interviewing Ohio Senate candidate Mark Pakita. He's a Republican trying to secure that Ohio Senate spot and help out the Republicans. Hopefully, we can get some Republican senators to take over the majority of the House and the Senate come midterms this year. How much of a difference will it make as far as Congress is concerned? I don't think Biden's going to get anything passed from now until then anyway. But securing a majority in the House and the Senate will make sure that Biden ends up just having a lame duck session and not screwing anything up too much. So that will be nice. That's going to happen Tuesday. Really looking forward to that. Anytime we can have a senator, or soon-to-be senator, hopefully, on the podcast is always great. I welcome anyone that wants to come on the podcast. Anyone wants to call in, that's fine too. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. I'll talk to anybody. I'll debate anybody. It does not matter to me. So be looking forward to that. And don't forget also, share the show, like the show. That really helps me out. I would appreciate that. Really want to try and grow this podcast and get the message out there. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share the show, whatever. I want to also thank Eric on Podbean for actually helping me out. Let's see. Dose says, Michael J. Steele will push your shit in. What do you mean? I've been on I've been on the Michael J. Steele show debate. You're saying he would beat me in a debate? Is that what you're getting at? I'm trying to just trying to make sense of that. Just to let you know, I've been on his show twice. We debated twice. The last time, which was like 2 nights ago, it actually got heated. Not just with me, because there are 2 other people on the line as well that yeah, right. He said, so Doe says Michael J. Steele will push your shit in. And he said, so he's saying that he would beat me in a debate. I don't think so. You can go listen to the shows. He has them recorded. So you can go listen to that. Look, I have a lot of respect for Michael J. Steele. I think he's a good guy. We just disagree on a lot as far as politics are concerned. I don't know him. I've just been on the show twice, called in, had very long discussions with him both times. Oh, I see where you're going with this. He said he's the undisputed champion. If you don't believe me, just ask him. Now I'm picking up what you're putting down, Dose. That's funny. One thing I think that Michael J. Steele, and some people disagree with me, but I actually think that a senator, he's not a senator, sorry, a Senate candidate, I need to clear that up, a Senate candidate that is willing to have his own podcast and be up in front of people every night for 2 hours and talking about his agenda, whether or not I agree with him, I respect that, because you don't ever see that. I think, look, like I said, I don't know how viable of a candidate Michael J. Steele is for that North Dakota Senate race. And you're right, you can argue on whether or not it helps his cause. I'm not going to say that it helps him or hurts him, right? It could be either way. A lot of people obviously think that it hurts him. I'm just saying that I respect someone getting up there and doing that, because where we're at currently politically, we don't get a lot of face time with these people. We see them in the media a lot, yeah, but they get like a 2-minute soundbite. They get, 3 minutes on Fox News or CNN to talk about one certain subject that they feel strongly about. But you don't get a 2-hour conference. Like, you don't get the only person, and this is why when Bernie Sanders went on to Joe Rogan's podcast during the presidential primaries, I respected that. I can't stand Bernie Sanders. Okay? Me and Bernie Sanders cannot be further apart. Oh, that's messed up, bro. Me and Bernie Sanders could not be further apart ideologically, but I respected him for going on Joe Rogan's podcast for 2.5 to 3 hours and talking about his agenda. Did it help him? I don't know. I think it helped him among the people that agree with him and hurt him even more among the people that disagree with him. But, and same with Michael J. Steele. Michael J. Steele is going to have people that agree with him, and him talking, and speaking his mind, whatever that may be, is going to help him with those people, but it's only going to hurt him with other people. I personally think that the problem with our presidential elections is we have, 3 debates, and they only get 2 minutes to talk on each question. And they're sitting there having to interrupt each other the whole time to fight for what they want to say. They get cut off. They don't have time to either say something smart. They only have time to say something stupid. Like, that's the... And so a lot of people have this misconception, I think, of what a lot of these people represent. He said, Meltdown Mike is the gift that keeps on giving on Podbeam. He's like herpes. That's funny. So, but back to what I was saying, I just feel as though we need to let these people talk. We need to know who we're getting. We need to... When is the last time you had, if any, ever, when is the last time you had any kind of political candidate at the House, Senate, or presidential level reach out to you and talk to you about issues going on in the community, issues you want them to represent for you in Congress? I would bet you haven't. I never have. I actually have never received a call from a political candidate, like the recording calls, want me to vote for him. Now, I know a lot of people have, but, the people that are running our country and representing us, I just think they need to be out there more. So I think that podcasts are actually a great way for them to get that message across. The problem with political candidates is they're so scared of stating their actual beliefs and elaborating on them because they don't want to lose votes or they don't want to piss anyone off. And I think that's a problem. I don't like that. I think that yeah, exactly. I wish AOC had a podcast too. Well, okay, she actually goes on those Instagram lives a lot. Now, every once in a while, she talks about other things and she'll talk about politics. But AOC actually does go on Instagram Live. I don't really watch them, but I know she does for extended amounts of time. So, he said, yeah, but she never shows her tits. I don't think Instagram will let you. But, Eric says, even Joe Rogan expressed interest in hosting a debate with Trump and Biden. Both Trump and Biden campaigns turned Rogan down. What Rogan and other podcasters are doing is a great thing. You're right, Eric. What Joe Rogan does is awesome. I thought Trump was open to that, though. I thought Trump was open to going on the Joe Rogan podcast to debate Joe Biden. But I could be wrong. I think that would have been great. And Joe Rogan would have been a perfect person to host that because he can be serious. And he's in between. He didn't like either of them. He openly stated that he did not support either of those candidates. So, and when you listen to Rogan, Rogan declined. Okay. So when you listen to Joe Rogan, though, he has his conservative values and he has some liberal tendencies too. He says he's a liberal. I think he's a little more conservative than he is a liberal, but for the most part, I'd say he's right in the middle. And that would have been perfect. He said, Eric says Michigan congressional candidate Anthony Carbonaro discovered the Slightly Serious show in 2020, and he came on the day before the election. See, that's fine. That's good. So I don't know. They should take advantage of it. If they want a platform, the podcast is a great place for them, for a candidate to have a platform. But you know, a lot of candidates they're not, and I went over this the other day, I actually talked about this with Michael J. Steele himself, and what I told Michael J. Steele was, look, I don't know if you're actually going to win, okay, but if you do, all I ask is that when you go to DC, your intent is not to be there because that you want to work there as a job, and you know, it's all about intent. And I talk about this a lot. Intent is everything. What is your reasoning for doing something? Are you actually running for Senate because you want to help people? Or are you running for Senate because you just want to be in that crowd? You want to be that politician. You want to be there in DC. The difference is the person that wants to go there and actually help people will stand by their values, okay, and stand by the ideas that they have stated they represent and believe in from the beginning. And they will not, no matter what the circumstances are in Washington, bow down to anyone else, whether it be a fellow Republican or a fellow Democrat or the opposite side of the aisle. They will go there. This is why you have to respect someone like Joe Manchin or Christine Sinema. I don't know a lot about them other than the recent stuff that they've done with the Build Back Better plan votes and in this voting against the filibuster, but they go against their party. I don't like John McCain. I never liked John McCain. I think John McCain was a huge traitor to the Republican Party. But he did go against the Republican Party. You can't, you have to have some kind of respect, even though I have very, very, very little respect for John McCain. But he was able to do that. I think John McCain was still a politician. I think his intent was to be there the whole time. He just did all that to spite Trump. But Eric says the Slightly Serious show has done interviews with Michael Baca. Baca is a gentleman from Colorado who made news during 2016 election and had his electoral vote disqualified for refusing to vote for Hillary. He bills himself as a Hamilton elector. As he states, he doesn't like the term faithless elector. It's interesting. So that was that was the big announcement. Be here Tuesday, 11 a.m. 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 o'clock Eastern for that interview. And I think it's going to be a good one. The next thing I want to talk about, Eric, I talked to you a little bit about this last night. And if you're on Facebook Live, you'll be able to see what I'm reading. But if you're on Podbeam, you'll be able to hear. So I was on Reddit the other day. And Reddit has political subreddits. They have some for conservatives. They have some for liberals. And I would say the majority of Reddit, though, is extremely liberal, just like any other website. There's a subreddit called Ask a Liberal. And basically what it is you go in there, you ask a question, and some liberal will answer it for you with their opinion on it. Well, this guy, or girl, it could have been, asked a question the question was, should pedophilia be normalized in the United States? And I could not help myself but to click on the comments and read what liberals thought about this question. The guy, after he asked the question, he said, should pedophilia be normalized in the United States? He said, I already know what the conservative perspective is, but I want to hear it from the liberal perspective. I kid you not, there were almost 100 freaking liberals in the comment section defending pedophilia. So I'm going to pull up a few of these comments on the screen here. Again, Podbeam, I'll read them, but you won't be able to see them. On Facebook, you should be able to see them. So here's a couple comments. First one, out of curiosity, in what other way would someone choose who they are attracted to? Like we accept that straight, gay, bi, or pansexual, etc. are all not a choice. Whether or not it's baked into your DNA, we can all agree that people don't choose who they're attracted to. It's either a born trait or the result of very early random events in your life that you have no control over. A couple other comments below this. I think that's right. That's why I said I did not know about the in the womb. I thought it could be also influenced by early childhood experiences or other factors, but I never thought it would be a conscious decision. Someone said, honestly, from what I see online, I can absolutely guarantee that heterosexual women don't choose to be attracted to straight men. Why would they? So that's one. The next big comment I'm going to put up here is, I don't know, you have to see for yourself. It's a long one, though. So this person says, there's much we don't understand about pedophilia. Here's a bunch of random facts that you may not be aware of. Pedophilia is a mental health condition in which a person experiences persistent preferential attraction to prepubescent minors. So I'm assuming a minor that hasn't hit puberty yet. It has nothing to do with a person's actions. The most common age that pedophilias first begin to notice these attractions is 12 years old. And the most common age that a person has the initial realization that they are a pedophile is 14 years old. This is not chosen, it's discovered. They then go on to say the DSMV distinguishes between pedophilia, the unchosen persistent attraction, and pedophilia disorder, which is the attraction plus harmful behaviors or life-disrupting distress. He said, we don't know how to cure pedophilia, but we have very effective treatments that cure pedophilia disorder for most pedophiles. A pedophile that does not have PD, which is pedophilia disorder, is by definition safe in society. Stop right there. The thing I don't understand is, if you're a pedophile, would you not have pedophilia disorder? How does that work? The second thing is, they say we have very effective treatments that cure pedophilia disorder. So it says we don't know how to cure pedophilia, but we have very effective treatments that cure pedophilia disorder. So they're distinguishing the difference between pedophilia and pedophilia disorder is basically whether or not you act on it. So if you are attracted to kids and you're looking up exactly what I was going with this, Dose. That's exactly where I was going with this. But so you're telling me if you're looking at fucking child porn, but you're not touching kids physically yourself, then that's okay. You're not a threat to society. How does that work? Am I missing something? And then for the people that do decide to touch a child, they say we have very effective treatments that cure pedophilia disorder. What is that? Shooting them? Putting them in prison? I don't know of any other effective. What other treatment is there? Let me finish the comment though. We got a long. It's a long comment. They got a lot more to say. They then go on to say, despite the fact that effective treatments exist, many pedophiles never seek treatment because they are afraid of being outed. Additionally, therapists that specialize in treating this population are few and far between. The stigma associated with the condition deters many therapists from focusing on this tremendous area of need. The few therapists that do offer services often cannot publicly advertise these services for fear of being harassed as a pedo sympathizer. So I do agree with that paragraph, actually. I do think that if someone did realize that they had a problem and they went to get help, it could be extremely difficult because no one likes pedophiles. Well, okay, I said no one likes pedophiles. Obviously, 100 people in this subreddit at least are okay with it, but I could see where that's tough, right? And then I could see where a therapist would not want to have any part in that. I think there's more than you think, and it would have to be something that's private. You're not going to just put it out there for everyone. And these people do need help. I hope that if someone was having these kind of thoughts in their head, they went and tried to get help before they ever acted on it at all. But, so I agree with that paragraph that they were talking about. Now, let's continue though. It says the rate of pedophilia in the population is estimated to be between 1 and 3%. That's a very large portion of the population, living in total silence with an illness that they did not choose to have. 1 to 3%. So in the United States, we have 330 million people. 1% would be 3.3 million. Am I right? That's crazy. 3% would be, you multiply that by 3, would be 9.9 million people. That's a big, just to put that in perspective, the black population is roughly 12 to 13% of the United States population. So if blacks made up 12 to 13% of the population in the U.S., and pedophiles are up to 3%, that's like, I mean, that's a lot of people. The comment continues and says, over half of child molesters do not have pedophilia. Most child molesters are categorized as situational offenders, meaning they would prefer adult partners, but for a variety of reasons they target children as surrogate partners. For example, the person may have a developmental disorder that impairs their ability to sympathize with the child or understand the consequences of their actions. Pedophilia is different from sexual sadism. Sexual sadists derive sexual pleasure from the act of harming, controlling another person. Recent studies have shown that pedophiles on average have higher levels of empathy for children than non-pedophiles. Pedophilia is better described as an irrational attraction rather than a desire to cause harm. Most pedophiles do not want to hurt children, and pedophiles that commit hands-on abuse often delusionally believe that the relationship was consensual and harmless. When a pedophile offends, the most common age for them to perpetrate their first offense is 14 years old. Many researchers believe that the teenage years are among the most formative years. Where am I at? Are among the most formative years in terms of how pedophile will ultimately fare their condition. So focusing efforts on treatment and support. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Pedophiles distinguish themselves as either pro-contact or anti-contact regarding their beliefs about children's ability to consent. Pro-contact pedophiles delusionally believe that adult-child relationships are harmless, and they tend to advocate for things like abolishment of AOC laws and inclusion into the LGBTQ community. Anti-contact pedophiles do not believe that children can provide informed consent, and they view their attractions as an unchosen mental health condition. Many of them experience their attractions as an enormous burden on their lives and would gladly accept support if it were available. Anti-contact, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what this person is saying is they're splitting these people into groups. They're splitting the groups and saying, look, you have an anti-contact pedophile, you have a contact pedophile. So a contact pedophile means that they think that kids are able to consent to a relationship with an older person. An anti-contact pedophile is someone who doesn't believe that kids are old enough to consent, and they don't try and act on that relationship. And then they're saying that most of the people that are molesting children aren't pedophiles. I'm sorry, but I've not one time in my entire life tried to pursue a regular relationship or a physical type of I've never tried to have sex with anyone that I haven't been attracted to. That's the best way to say it. I've never tried to hook up with anyone that I'm not attracted to. Because what makes you want to hook up with them? That you're freaking attracted to them. You don't. Maybe I'm shallow-minded when it comes to this. I don't know. Maybe I'm too simple-minded to change my opinion, and I don't care because I think it is just flat out fucking wrong. Here's my other problem with defending this. And this is where I go back with the Democrats, or not Democrats, because you have moderate ones. Liberals, okay? The extreme left. Is they're advocating for pedophilia, and they're saying that it's not their fault. They're saying that it's like someone who is gay, or maybe trans, or, something like that, that you can't choose who you're attracted to. And that's true. Because if you think about it, and I've thought a lot about this, and my opinion has somewhat changed as far as, the whole gay thing and all that. Because when I think about it, you have a lot of guys that like fat women. You have a lot of guys that like skinny women. We all like different things, right? So obviously, I'm sure, which there is, men can be attracted to men and women can be attracted to women. I get it. And let's say someone is sick and they are attracted to a younger person. They're saying prepubescent, which is before puberty, which is extremely young. Maybe so. But they're also at the same time saying that they're mentally ill. So if it's the same thing as being gay or trans, are you also saying that all the gay and trans people are mentally ill as well? That's exactly what the left is saying. And I don't think that's right, because there's a lot of gay people that are far more mentally healthy than the average regular. I mean, so I don't think that all gay people are mentally ill. Not even close. And yet, they're trying to make it okay to have pedophilia, but they still have to back it up by saying they have a mental illness and they need help. But they're going to say that it's categorized as the same thing as being gay or trans, but they don't ever say that those people are mentally ill. So you have a problem with your argument. The argument is that you cannot defend this. It's indispensable. At least in the way that you're doing it. You have to separate. If you're going to defend pedophilia, you need to separate it from other sexual orientations. Because it's not the same. And if it is, then you're saying that everyone whose sexual orientation is other than being straight is mentally ill. So yeah, when I read this, I was like, I'm going to tear this shit apart. Wrong is wrong. Here's the other thing. Like I said before, you want to split them up between an anti-contact and a pro-contact person. And you want to also say that pedophilia is different than pedophilia disorder. If you have pedophilia, I have Tourette's. So there's no difference between he has Tourette's as opposed to he has Tourette's disorder. It's the same thing. I mean, and then you're walking the line of if you have a strong attraction to women and you're not around women, or you're not acting upon, let's say you have a straight guy and he's straight and there's no women around him ever to talk to. At some point, he's going to start seeking out women. How's he going to do it? Well, he's going to control urges either by watching porn, or he's going to go out and try to find one. Same thing with a deer. During the rut, they hang out away. They don't go near does the whole year, and then when the rut kicks in, they start getting the urges. They go to find them. You go in pursuit of it. They're going, at some point, you would imagine that they would act on it, or have to do something to try and combat that urge. Especially for men. So, what, you're saying that if a guy's just watching child pornography, but he's not actually physically touching the person, then that's okay? No, because someone had to make that child pornography. There's only a market for, child pornography exists because there's a market for it. If there was no market for child pornography, it would not exist. If there's no money to be made from child pornography, it wouldn't exist. If there's no money to be made from oil, we wouldn't be pumping oil. If there's no money to be made from gold, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't go get gold. Unless it's to use it in, like, the iPhone. So, because there's a market, because there are pedophiles that are willing to go watch that stuff, that's why there's a market for it. I'm sorry, but it's wrong. It's not the same thing. It's not the same as being gay. At least I'm not going to classify it as that. They have a compelling argument saying that, yeah, you don't control who you're attracted to, that's fine. But you can't classify them in the same conversation as a gay person. You can't. Because I imagine that there's a lot of gay people out there that would be very offended with you saying that they have a mental illness. I guarantee you they wouldn't like that. Because it's not true. But pedophilia, I would say, is a mental illness. So now we get to the conversation of, what do we classify as a mental illness? Now we go into the whole talk of, with some of these athletes having mental illnesses. Is it up to us as a society to distinguish what is a mental illness? Are we going to say that, if you're gay, you're not mentally ill necessarily, or being gay doesn't make you mentally ill, but being a pedophile does? But the only difference is between the two is you're just attracted to a different demographic. But it's still along the lines of attraction. Or when you go to look at some of these athletes, like a Antonio Brown and then a Simone Biles, is Antonio Brown not mentally ill because he acted out and he was just pissed off about his money situation, and Simone Biles isn't mentally ill because, or she's mentally ill because she was stressed and was dealing with some kind of thing in her head that could keep her from performing at the top of her game. So we're going to split it up because both of them quit on their team. Both of them, Simone Biles was more stressed, I'd say. Antonio Brown wasn't necessarily stressed, but honestly, we're just going to leave it up to society to determine what's mentally ill or not? I don't think that's right. If you're mentally ill, you're mentally ill. So I was so shocked. Well, I say that, I'm not very shocked because, hell, during the Rittenhouse thing, he shoots into a crowd of liberals and freaking kills a pedophile. So, and then hell, another liberal 2 days after the Rittenhouse trial, who was a convicted pedophile, happens to run over the people in Waukesha. So, maybe I'm not surprised. But defending pedophilia is it. I will never, ever, ever support that movement, ever. It's wrong. A child cannot consent. It's one thing, yeah. When you're in high school, you go out and you do things. High schoolers have sex. High schoolers go out, they party. I get it. It's one thing if they're doing it with other high schoolers who also are kind of, new to all that, and you're growing up and you're experimenting, whatever. That's fine. But a 30, 40, or 25, 30, 40-year-old person going back and sleeping with a high schooler? Hell no. Or a middle schooler? Or elementary school? Like some of these people, that's disgusting. But it's not surprising, too, because these are the same people that want to lower the voting age to 16 years old in their voting bill. We don't even let 18-year-olds drink. We now don't let 18-year-olds purchase a firearm. But we can let them vote in an election. Or better yet, we don't even let 16-year-olds go to an R-rated movie. We barely let them drive. But we want them to vote in an election that controls all the laws based on everything that me as an adult, as a taxpayer, has to do. The majority of people that are 16 years old aren't paying taxes. Hell, their parents are getting the tax credit because they have them. But they get to vote? Jester says because the left knows they're easily manipulated. You're right. And the other thing, Jester, is that this is why they want the voting bill passed too. The left, here, and here's what I think is going to happen. Or what their goal is. They know Joe Biden is not very well liked. They also know that they have a big threat of losing the House and the Senate come midterms. What I think you're seeing is they tried to have infrastructure passed. They got it passed. That was bipartisan, though. They tried to get Build Back Better passed. Build Back Better consisted of all those crazy expensive promises that the far-leaning left has promised people throughout their campaigns. But they really know that wasn't going to pass, or it wasn't going to be easy. Manchin and Sinema, the Republicans have utilized the filibuster strategy to prevent other legislation like the voting laws to get passed. The Democrats use the filibuster as much as anyone. The filibuster is there to protect us as a society from one party that has complete control of the House, the Senate, and the executive branch to just shove legislation down our throat. And if you didn't have the filibuster, we would have legislation changes going back and forth every time a party got control of all three of the branches. It would not be good. But now they're going to come out and say, "Oh, we want to eliminate the filibuster." Pook says that these smears are a part of a long history of conservative politicians and commentators accusing Democrats with no evidence of actual sex crimes and child abuse they're unwilling to condemn among their own political allies. These smears are a part of a long history. What do you mean, Pook? What are you referring to? But there are a few reasons why pedophilia is the accusation of choice. It's possibly the easiest to understand, least defensible allegation available to them, and it's one of the few moral high grounds they believe they have left to claim. Are you talking about pedophiles themselves or the Dems as far as defending it? And then I'll wait for you to respond before I get off topic. So, because I'm trying to understand Just like how all Republicans are racist during the election season. Okay, so you're saying, invented pedophilia allegations are an appealing ploy for a party whose identity remains wrapped up in family values rhetoric, even as its efforts to camouflage its own hollow moral center peter out. So, I think I get what you're saying, that the Republicans will accuse Democrats of either being a pedophile or defending pedophilia, because also, as to try to put something on them, but they have their own issues, and they're trying to hide those issues by making something bigger on the other party. I get what you're saying. Look, both parties have problems. Pedophilia does not hold itself to the Democratic Party at all. Okay? It says they use it as a tool, but unwilling to condemn their own allies. You're saying that they will criticize like a Democrat as being a pedophile, but they won't criticize their own Republican as being one? Look, I don't care who the fuck you are. If you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, if you're touching kids, you need to go. You not only go, there's a lot worse needs to happen to you. I don't care who it is. I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans on that Epstein list. I think there are more Democrats, but there are a lot of Republicans on that Epstein list. So I wanted the whole Ghislaine Maxwell trial. First of all, I wanted it to be streamed live. They didn't do that, and I wanted her to testify against everyone. And I didn't care who went down. I did not care. But going back to the filibuster deal, what you're seeing now, and what I think is going on, is they don't really expect any of this legislation to pass at this point. So what they're going to do is they're going to try and hype up this idea of eliminating the filibuster, which won't happen. They don't really want it to happen. But they're going to hype it up. And when it doesn't happen, and they end up, come November, when they're campaigning to try and retain the majority, their campaign is going to revolve around blaming Republicans using the filibuster and keeping them from passing any of the legislation. Because that will be the only kind of leverage they'll have come midterms. That will be it. Biden has a 7% annual inflation rate, the highest since 1982 as of right now, not telling what it's going to be come November. He has that working against him. The only way to combat the inflation rate is to hike rates in the Fed, or have the Fed hike rates. The Fed's supposedly going to do it multiple times this year. When they do, the stock market is going to take a dive. That's how it works. And it's not that hiking rates is a bad thing. It's going to combat inflation. That's how you do it. It's just a matter of people will look at Joe Biden and say, our stock market is doing terrible, or he's not going to do anything. He convinces the Fed not to hike rates, and inflation is going to keep going up out of control, and it's going to be double what it is now. So he has that working against him. The only kind of leverage the Dems will have is if none of this passes, none of this legislation passes at all, they will use the filibuster and the Republicans as a means to blame them why they couldn't get it done. Jester sniffing anyway. Okay. But even if, and then my other idea about what's going on and what I think you'll see happen is if they really do want to eliminate the filibuster, they know that first of all, they'll have to know guaranteed 100% that they can pass the voting bill. Because if they don't, they're screwed. Because here's the thing. If they don't pass the voting bill, you can promise that at some point, maybe not November, but at some point, hold on, Eric, I'll go back and read it. At some point, the Republicans will have control, and there will be no filibuster to stop the Republicans from doing what they want to do. And the Democrats will need that filibuster in their back pocket, and they won't have it. Now, the voting bill, if you've read it, and I went over it the other day, if they pass that, that will make it extremely difficult for Republicans to be voted in again, especially in certain states. and especially in the presidential election. This isn't even counting the House and the Senate. This is just counting, the presidential elections. It will be extremely difficult to have a Republican win. It will also make it difficult for senators in some of these, like, toss-up states. Maybe like I don't want to say Florida, but some of these states that may have a Republican or a Democrat, or be Democrat, but they'll go Republican, whatever. It'll make it hard for Republicans to get voted in because of the way that they're going to change the rules of engagement within voting. Because of who they're going to allow to vote. It's going to have a huge shift. So that's the only way that them eliminating the filibuster will actually work out for them. At that point, they'll also be able to push other legislation like the Build Back Better plan. And or I'm trying to think, maybe some of these gun laws. Someone argued the other day, well, yeah, but it has to be constitutional for the gun laws and all that. You're right. They're not going to just eliminate guns, okay? They're going to go and they're going to start making legislation. Can't have more than 10 rounds in a magazine. Can't have this gun. Can't have that gun. We're going to do another assault weapons ban. They're going to try and push the envelope on what they're allowed to do. And it's all going to happen between now and November. Furthermore, I don't think, in fact, I think that it's already been shot down. I don't think they're going to be able to eliminate the filibuster. But if they did, Herbalist says, hi you, the real key. Yeah, I'm the real key. I want to go back to Eric's comment, though. He said, I know a case from almost 20 years ago where two cousins, and they weren't first cousins, they were fourth cousins. The female victim was 13 at the time. The male perpetrator was 18. Not going to name names, this relationship produced a child. Female victim had grown up in a toxic environment where the mother was more interested in drug hustling and other crimes, and a former aunt called Child Protective Services to have her and her brother and sister removed from the home. Eric says the male perpetrator grew up in a toxic environment as well. His mother took custody of the three kids as a favor for their great-grandparents instead of sending them to foster care. So what I'm going to say about that, Eric, is I agree. Look, something usually causes people to think a certain way. I think, you're a product kind of your environment. Statistically speaking, I would imagine that a lot of people who, are pedophiles or have molested children were molested themselves. But that still doesn't make it right. Is that a contributing factor? Yes. But think about this. They want to give someone a pass for being a pedophile. But they don't want to give someone a pass. We don't give mass shooters passes. They're mentally ill. It doesn't excuse it. How many you would have to be mentally ill to go into a church and shoot up a bunch of people, or they're messed up. To go to the kid at Oxford High School in Michigan had problems. And I guarantee you he was being picked on. He was being picked on. The same thing with the kids at Columbine, right? They got picked on all the time. The kid at Parkland, same thing. They picked on him all the time. That's a contributing factor. We don't excuse it. He still went there and shot those people and murdered them. It's still wrong. Should we help some of these people? Yes. We should help. If they're sick, then help them. No one is saying that that we don't excuse mental illness. No. We want to help people that are mentally ill. I have no problem with that. But I'm not here to normalize that. What, we're going to normalize mass shooting too because people are mentally ill? We're going to normalize athletes quitting in the middle of games because they have a mental illness? Absolutely not. There needs to be a line drawn. And so, that's, I was fired up going through that subreddit thread with the comments. I was really fired up because it's just, I don't understand that at all. Now, or Cool Cat says Cinema and Mansion shut that down and support the filibuster. Yeah, Cool Cat. So I'm now seeing your comment. You're right. Okay, so they did shut it down. So it's probably not going to happen, which is a good thing. It shouldn't. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat that's going to try and eliminate the filibuster. You're freaking crazy if you want to. I'll go over what the filibuster is. For those of you that don't know what the filibuster is not a rule. It's a strategy of basically just talking and debating and debating and debating, and it's delaying or halting a bill from being passed. Because for a bill to be passed, it has to be voted on. The Senate, when we created the Senate, never came up with a rule that allowed the majority to just end a debate and force a vote on a bill for a good reason. So even since I think it's 1789 was actually the first time the filibuster was used. But throughout time, it's become more and more common. And leading into the 19th and 20th century, it became very common. In the early 1900s, they changed the rules, and they created what's called cloture. Michael J. Steele told me how to pronounce it the other day, but it's cloture. That is the actual rule, and what that says is that, as it currently stands, you need 3/5 of the majority, or 60 senators out of the 100, to agree to end the debate and go and force a vote. Which means that for this voting bill, for them to actually vote on it, they need, as it stands, Sinema and Manchin, the two Democrats that don't want it to pass, and 10 more Republicans to be okay with ending debate and allowing the Senate to vote on the bill. I would imagine that if they're okay with ending the debate and going to a vote, that the Senate, the Republicans they got to do that would be in support of that voting bill. So it would more than likely pass. Thankfully, that's not the situation. But the filibuster itself is not a rule, it's a strategy. The rule behind it is the cloture, how the hell you say it, cloture. That's what they would change. They would change, either eliminate that and say that we don't need 60 out of 100, we only need maybe 51 out of 100, which is just a simple majority, to go and force a vote on the bill. That would make it way easier for them to pass, because it's easier to get 2 people to agree on something than it is to get 12. So that's why the filibuster rule is important. I think when the two-party system that we have right now in the United States, the reason it can be dangerous is both parties don't respect different ideas, right? They don't. Each party, if they could, would have 100% representation in Washington, D.C. They would be 100% okay with having every representative a Republican, and every senator a Republican, and the president a Republican. They would be 100% okay with that. Democrats would be okay with all 3, the House, the Senate, and the presidency be filled by Democrats, 100%. That's not right. I would not want that, because then you're completely eliminating any kind of checks and balances, that may need to happen. No one has any kind of representation. That maybe if you're a leftist and it's all Republican, you don't have any representation at that point. You kind of do, but you don't, not ideologically. That's not how the United States is supposed to work. And the problem is that now you have the Democrats trying to force a voting bill that would put them one step closer to being able to completely control the United States government as we know it. Why do I say that? Because statistically speaking, there are far more Democrats than there are Republicans as it go with the general population is concerned. That's why Democrats are okay with having a popular vote instead of what we currently have as the Electoral College. Because if they had a popular vote, the Democrats would never lose a presidential election. Not ever. Because you would have, LA, New York City, Miami. Miami would be close now, but you have Miami, you have Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Boston, Chicago. All of those are primarily Democrats, and that's where the majority of the United States population lives, is in these major cities. Even Nashville itself, here in Tennessee, Nashville itself, I believe, is more of like a blue area, but everywhere around it's red, right? Memphis is like a blue area. I don't know about Knoxville, but, just because you're in a red state, the big cities still tend to be blue. Georgia, if you go look at the voting map, it was completely red except for Macon, Atlanta, and over in Augusta. I don't know how big Augusta is, but over there, right, just where the big populations are, and your capital cities, they tend to be left. So yeah, Savannah and Albany. So you would never see a Republican president after that if we had a popular vote. The other reason we don't have a popular vote is because you would have, like I said, 10 cities in the United States that completely choose who's president of the United States, and now that person is going to run the country based off of the agenda of the people that only live in the cities. The reason we have an electoral college is because it gives the people like the blacks and the whites in the rural areas, the farmers in the Midwest, the Amish in Ohio and Pennsylvania. It gives them all representation in Congress. They all get to vote, and whether or not your person wins or not, it still equals out the playing field, and it gives them representation. It allows them to relay their needs and their concerns to the elected officials in Washington. It is not right for the stockbroker on Wall Street or the movie producer in LA to get to say with 100% what the farmer in Iowa needs to do to live his life. Eric says the 17th Amendment should have never been implemented. That was a constitutional amendment that opened the door for direct U.S. Senate elections. Original intent was for the state governors and legislators to appoint the U.S. senators. Now, Eric, I did not know that. And maybe I should go back and read the Constitution, because I think you just taught me something. I did not realize that. He said, now you do. Well, here's what look, when it comes to Constitution, when we start talking about changing amendments in the Constitution, I think that the only time we should make amendments to the Constitution is if it's adding a right and a freedom. Good example, giving blacks and women the right to vote. That is something that should have been added in there. Anytime you add a freedom or a right, that can go in the Constitution. It should never, ever, ever take away a freedom or a right. Another example of that would be prohibition. That was added to the Constitution. Took away your freedom of drinking alcohol or consuming it, whatever. That should have never gone into place. Obviously, it was amended. But if you're going to do something to the Constitution, it should not be anything outside of adding a freedom or a right. Now, when it comes to the freedom and right, that stops at anyone that's not an American citizen. So, putting in the Constitution that you can come over here illegally and become an American citizen, no. Absolutely not. But Eric says, presidency was decided by the Electoral College. We're technically voting for electors to vote based on the will of the people of different states. 48 states is winner to take all. 2 states are congressional district method. Yes, and that's how it is still, Eric, as far as when we vote, this is what people think. So when they go to the ballot box, you have a lot of boxes that you check outside of just voting for the president. You may vote for a senator, you may vote for local people, right? You vote for your electorates. And then you go and you check who you want to run for president. But if you notice, I believe, if I remember rightly, but when you're clicking people, it'll tell you who they're supposed to vote for. Like if Michael Key, and it'll have like Republican or Trump next to it, right? We don't elect presidents off of what our exact vote is. We elect it based off of what the people that we vote for, what they go and vote. You're putting the trust in a representative to go and relay your vote for president. Sometimes they don't. They should never do that, but we are a republic. We are not a democracy. I think it's absolutely crazy when I hear candidates and elected leaders start talking about, we need to protect our democracy. You idiot, we're not a democracy. You're trying to turn it into a democracy. Turning it into a democracy is not a good thing. A pure democracy completely takes away the needs and representation of minorities. And minorities is not just black people or Mexicans. Minorities is anyone that it's ideal based. So if the Republican's the minority, then you're completely taking away any of their representation. Going to a popular vote in the United States would cause a civil war. 100%. Because then you would have so many people that already feel like our voting system doesn't work. Now they would have no kind of representation with it. People swear it's corrupt. The 16th Amendment was another huge mistake. 2, the amendment gave us the IRS, which many people swear is a corrupt entity. I believe so too. Which now we have Biden who wants to add 80,000 IRS agents. That's cool. But let's go over to Facebook. Cool Cat says the nuclear option is not an official procedure, but rather a loophole in Rule XX. Since it's a loophole, I question it being constitutional. We are a republic. That's why we have an electoral vote. Yes, we are a republic with a democracy. Kind of on that, Cool Cat. Because we're a republic all the way down to our local elections, too. It's only like democracy-wise, I think at the very lowest portion of our government in our local elections. But other than that, it's a republic. If we were in a democracy, then we ourselves would be in Washington arguing, laws and debating and all that stuff ourselves. We wouldn't have representation there. Honestly, I don't think it'd be as efficient. There may be pure democratic governments out there. I don't know. I'd have to go look. But I don't think it will work as well. You understand, the United States was an experiment after the Revolutionary War to see if people could govern themselves. So far, it has worked out very successfully with some minor bumps like the Civil War along the way. But this Civil War, regardless of what the reasoning of that war was, also was good in helping shape where we are now. We are the most powerful country in the world, and undisputedly. And the only way that's going to change is if we, as a country, allow it to change. No one's going to come in here and beat us in a fight. The only way we are going to give up our standing as number one is if we allow it to happen. Some people are okay with that. We have some people, even on the Republican side, these globalists that want us to, the world to be together and, trade. And I'm fine with the trade thing, but we need to worry about ourselves. Because when it all comes down to it, okay, Cool Cat says it's also democracy because a majority vote go to the elector. Okay. So, yeah, there you go. There's a good example. If we were actually, I want to kind of move on because I lost my train of thought, but the next thing I think, I wouldn't be surprised if this happened. So Joe Biden and other Democrats were actually very supportive, as of not long ago, of the filibuster. They were all over camera, Republicans, Democrats, both of them. They all loved the filibuster before they said they would never vote against it. Now Joe Biden has changed his tune and is like, am willing to change any rule in the Senate to try and get the vote bill passed, and he's pitching it as, helping save our democracy, whatever. Recently as in yesterday, the Supreme Court also shut down Joe Biden's vaccine mandates, or the OSHA mandates. Supreme Court said, no, it's not constitutional. You're not doing this. I wouldn't even be surprised now if Joe Biden starts campaigning to pack the court, which is something he hasn't even said he wasn't going to. In the beginning of his election cycle, he said, I'm not going to pack the court. But now, he's kind of on the fence about that. I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out here soon and says, we need to pack the court. We need to get more Democratic judges into the Supreme Court so that we can rule certain things like this, like the vaccine mandates, and push some of these executive orders. That's going to be the next thing. Whether it will happen or not, I don't know. But that will be the next thing. They're going to go against everything that they've said they don't believe in because they cannot stand losing. And they can't stand losing because it's all about wins and losses when it comes to Republicans and Democrats. It's not about what's best for the people. It's literally about wins for the party. When these people get elected, both parties here, and they go to Washington, all that campaign bullshit they spewed goes away. It's out the door. It now turns into, how can I benefit the party? Whatever that may be. Eric says, let me go back and read some of these comments on Podbean. What's up, Slightly? What's going on? I don't think we should be ran at a state level. Fuck the federal government. Oh, he says, I think we should be ran. Sorry. I think we should be ran at a state level. Fuck the federal government. That's how, thank God we pretty much are. The federal government's like a template as far as laws are concerned. And each state has its own laws that they enforce. That's why you can go and smoke dope in some states, but not in others, right? That's why you can work in some states right now during the pandemic, and other ones are shut down. Eric says, second, congressional term limits, considering that members of the House and Senate wouldn't vote themselves out of a job. No, they would not. It would come down to either a constitutional convention of state legislators enacting amendment legislation to impose term limits on legislative branch to reduce the possibility or possibly eliminate corruption. Let me reread the bottom part of that again. Convention of state legislators enacting amendment legislation. Yes. So I don't know how that works as far as how they would go about it, because you're right, they would not vote themselves out. Harley Clearwater says that Joe Biden passes the Build Back Better bill, it would give the ATF $5 billion American tax dollars. Cool Cat says that doesn't matter because if the Republicans win the House and Senate, they can impeach the judges. Yeah. Look, when you start going on the down the road of we're going to impeach people, or we're going to start changing things that we don't like, I try to stay in the middle of this conversation. When I say stay in the middle, I try not to pick a side. When it came to impeaching Donald Trump, I thought that was the biggest load of bullshit ever. Because since the day that Donald Trump took office, were trying to get him out of office. From the day he took office. They were never able to do it until they finally, for whatever bullshit reason, got some phone call, or found some phone call and were able to file the first articles of impeachment. For whatever bullshit reason. I don't even want to go into it. That was wrong. Because it wasn't like they were impeaching him just for that. They had been trying to get rid of his ass since the beginning. And the second time, with the January 6th deal, they wasted all that money impeaching him, and he wasn't even the fucking president. Talking about ways. I don't believe in that. You know, and then people are saying, oh, if we win the House and we win the Senate, Republican-wise, in November, we're going to file articles of impeachment on Joe Biden. In fact, if you go on to the government tracker, the government bill tracker site, where you find all these bills, they already have documents written up to impeach Joe Biden. I don't think that's right. Regardless of what people think about the election being stolen, whatever, I'm not getting into that argument. The only thing I ever say about that is I don't know if it was stolen or not, but it's questioned. It's obviously being questioned for whatever reason, right? I don't know for sure. I will never voice my true opinion on what I think happened. I'm just going to leave it up for whatever. You understand? I don't like Joe Biden as much as the next person. But there were people that didn't like Donald Trump either. And they're pissed, if not more pissed, when Donald Trump was elected than I was when Biden was elected. But that is how we work in the United States. That is how our government is run, and we're not always going to like the person that is elected. Unfortunately. But that's also what makes the United States great. As far as impeaching judges, again, you know, I feel more comfortable with Republican judges, Cool Cat, because I think that they'll actually uphold the Constitution. And that's what I care about when it comes to a judge. I don't think a judge should be Republican or Democrat or have any kind of agenda other than what that Constitution says. And that's how it should be. So honestly, in the matter of the Supreme Court, it should never, ever, ever be a controversy on who a president is willing to put in there. If it is, that means it's not the right person for the job to start with, in my opinion. Because if you have someone that is willing to make changes to the Constitution or not uphold it, then why are we putting them on the Supreme Court? If it's someone who is so right-leaning or so left-leaning that they're going to let that get in the way, then they should not serve on the Supreme Court. And I think that's where we're going wrong. But also, it's hard these days now to figure out who does have an agenda when we're going to fill a court seat. Because no matter who it is, we're going to, you have either the Republicans or the Democrats, making it seem like that person has an agenda, even if they don't. They did that with, who was the woman that just got placed on there that Trump appointed? The girl from, she went to Notre Dame. She's the newest judge we had. They were hammering her about her stance on abortion and stuff. But when you listen to her talk, she's extremely smart, and it sounds like she was going to be whatever the Constitution was, and that's how it should have been. You said 7 judges don't follow the Constitution, and they should. That's wrong. Law should never be partisan at all. Law and the Constitution should never be a partisan issue. Obviously, people... Amy Coney Barrett. Yes, her. That's who I was trying to get. Let's see, you read some of these comments on Podbeam. Eric says, Constitutional Convention might be better. You might better have the right people in place. First Amendment idea, balanced budget amendment. Then he said, Donald Trump has too much dirt on people in power. That's true, too. He also said, Dems set a precedent. GOP may return the favor. Yes. And when Jester says, when Let's Go Brandon has more downloads than Joe Biden has votes, kind of makes you wonder. That is true, too. That's a good point. Justice is supposed to be blind. That blindfold is being taken off. Amy Coney Barrett is the name, yes. So, again, our political atmosphere right now is we're going to do things that spite the other party. And I don't think there are a lot of politicians now that have their actual own agenda. They just conform to whatever the party's agenda is going to be. It is a problem when we have these committees in the House of Representatives and the Senate, And the people serving on the committees have no experience with, thanks, Jester. See you later. I'll probably come, when I'm done with this, come into yours. But the people that, damn it, lost my thought. When we have committees and they have no experience on a committee, like AOC sitting on a finance committee. AOC was a waitress. She has no experience in finance at all. But they get to be on these committees because they go and they fundraise money and basically pay to be on the committees. Yeah, Eric, I know Jester's podcast. He's on TikTok and Podbean too. So it's Doomsday Podcast for you listeners on Facebook as well. It's a really good one. The problem with these committees, like I said, we have people on these committees that have never had any kind of experience with the committee they're serving on. It's a literal fundraising event for the party. It's whoever raises the most fucking money for the party. And you can see who the best fundraiser is by who's in the most powerful seats. Nancy Pelosi raised the most money out of the Democratic Party. They actually have like quotas they got to make. Politicians spend the majority of their day selling people, calling up rich corporations trying to get money for the party, because they need the money to stay in that position. Eric says both political parties have the same end goal. You're right. Complete takeover of the government. It really is. It has become a game about money and power. That's why having term limits would be great, but they're not going to. They're not ever going to do that. They're not ever going to invoke term limits. Cool Cat says AOC only represents New York, not America. You're right. But she represents America when we're talking about the House of Representatives, Cool Cat, because the House of Representatives vote on policy and create policy that hurts the entire country or helps the entire country. They have these committees come up with these bills, and it all starts there. So we have people like AOC on the Finance Committee. They may be writing up bills regarding finance or disputing bills regarding finance. It all starts there. Then it goes to the whole House. So she may only represent New York, but she does represent the United States as well when it comes to policy. So, it's a big problem. We need people that I think we need to make it to where corporations, first of all, cannot donate any money. If the owner of the corporation wants to donate money, that's fine. You're a citizen of the United States, whatever. But the corporation should not. If you go and you look at the people's campaign donors, the first largest ones on the list are going to be big corporations. And then we need to take lobbying out of it. We do. We need to take their ability to make trades in individual stocks. The Pelosi day trading strategy needs to be rid of. We need to hold them to only being able to invest in index ETFs or mutual funds, tracking American indexes. Why? Because they don't get a say on the specifics of the companies they're investing in. They're just all American companies, and they better make policy that's going to benefit the stock market as a whole. So, it's not so much our structure of government is very good. Probably have the best structure of government in the world, and it's shown and it's worked. The problem is now how our government is able to operate. Now we're running into an issue now, because now we have politicians that have been there for 40 years. They're able to run campaigns and talk about all the shit they're going to do that they haven't done in the 39 years prior, but now they are. And now now people are going to elect them. And a lot of times there's no one to run against them because you need money to do it. you have to take away certain things that they're not going to eliminate. And so I'm really just speaking a fantasy here, but that is where we're getting into the problems. It is, and it's sad. The last thing I wanted to go back and discuss, and it kind of falls into all this, is going back to the OSHA mandates that got shut down, thank God, but also how that kind of goes into economics and the Democrats' economics. Eric has heard me say this a lot. I think he's got it down by now. Trickle-down economics doesn't exist. Okay? It's trickle-down economics is a description that the left uses to insult tax policy of Republican tax policy, basically. Ronald Reagan never, ever talked about trickle-down economics. Reaganomics is often interchanged with trickle-down economics, but it's not the same thing. It's not even close. People, Joe, go ahead, Eric. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. It would be tough. It would be really tough. It would take a lot. It'd be a huge overhaul of the government doing that, right? Uh, yeah. Well, in the other problem you run into, Eric, is no matter what, you're always going to have some senators and House members that have been there for a long time. For several years, longer than the two terms. So you would need them to now. Go ahead. So you're saying like give them two more terms so it starts over? Like if you were in there for three terms already, when they make the bill of a two-term limit, then you give them two more? See, I think I don't like that though. I think if you give them like two more terms, like saying, look, we're going to a two-term limit, and even if you've been there for 40 years already, we'll start it over. You get two more terms. If you win this your next election, you get two more terms and that's it. And then you kind of start it fresh for everyone, right? Yeah, because if you're gonna allow a lot of those, like Pelosi or someone, she's probably not gonna make it two more terms. I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm just saying she's pretty old. Yeah. Oh, before that thing, maybe the '90s. Yeah, but mm, but yeah. And so like if they can win their election, then give them two more terms, just like everyone else. Um, but going on to the back to the trickle down economics deal, trickle down economics is always said to be when you give rich tax cuts or corporations tax cuts. The idea is that it will flow down to the lower middle class, right? It That's not true. First of all, no Republican has ever just given a tax cut to the rich. They have not just only lowered the top tax bracket. Usually they lower all of them. Second, trickle-down economics actually works extremely well. It may not work when you're talking about the benefit part, as far as giving the rich tax cuts and it flowing down to the lower middle class. Maybe that doesn't work, but you know it does work? When you fucking raise taxes on them and increase their expenses, that does trickle down to the lower middle class. Just like the vaccine mandates. You understand, economics is not just a money thing. It's not just the economy. Economics is a way of thinking. It's behavioral. Okay, you can make economics like, instead of a money thing, let's say you're talking about opportunity costs, right? Like, I can go study or I can go to a movie. If I go to a movie, I don't study, I don't do well on my test tomorrow. Or I can go home and study instead of going to a movie. Consequences, I miss the movie, but I study and I make an A on my test. See, there's no money involved there. Well, that's a trade-off, but also, like, even if you made it into a money example, let's say it costs me $10 to go see the movie. I can go to the movie and not have $10 afterwards, or I can not go to the movie and save my $10. That's economics. Like, there's more to it than just money. And when you start talking about the vaccine mandates, and I went into this in detail on another episode. Exactly, cool cat humorous. Will Rogers made up trickle-down economics as a joke. Exactly. And he did it back in the early, a long, long time ago, well before Ronald Reagan. But with the vaccine mandates, the consequences of the mandates 100% trickle down to the lower middle class. If it didn't, they wouldn't have made the mandates. Because the whole point of the mandate was trying to get everyone vaccinated. And most of the people that aren't vaccinated are probably in the lower middle class. Not always, but I would say, let's say the majority, because why? The majority of people are in the lower middle class. But they needed that, so they started at the business level, or they started at the federal government level, but also the OSHA ones going to businesses. Not just businesses, but businesses with at least 100 employees. So wealthier individuals and owners of these businesses and bigger businesses, because they wanted to make sure that they force their employees to get vaccinated. That is trickle-down economics at its finest. It does work 100%. It works 100% unless the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional. There has to be some kind of interference there that blocks it, that doesn't keep it from working. You know why? Because with the vaccine mandates, they gave people an ultimatum. If you go to CVS or Walgreens right now and you got a COVID test, it would be free. The federal government pays for it in the federal coverage requirements. With the test needed for an employee under the mandates, you had to either get vaccinated or show a negative test every week. That test to go to work, the return to work test, were not paid for by the federal government, and the federal government said that the insurance companies did not have to fund it. If you give the choice for an insurance company to pay for something or not, they're not going to pay for it. Now the expense falls on the business. If a business passes, on average, 35% of the cost from tax hikes down to the employee in the form of lower wages, reduced benefits, or laying them off, then they will damn sure pass on the cost, which is about $100 to $150 a week per test, down to the employee that is personally making the decision to not get vaccinated. The business is not going to be on the hook for a personal decision of the employee. They will 100% trickle down that expense to the lower middle class. Trickle-down economics works extremely, extremely well, but not the way that everyone says it. People have this, it's not a one-way street. The left actually uses trickle-down economics more than anybody because they're the ones that are willing to increase taxes on the rich. Tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. When you do that, again, like I said, on average, 35% of that extra tax that needs to be paid is passed down to the employee. The other portion is passed on to the consumer. What bothers me is that when you go on the White House website and you read their agendas, their economical agendas, every kind of agenda they have, be it the child tax credit, the Build Back Better plan, whatever it is, they're saying how much it's going to improve the economy and grow the economy and blah, 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 blah. One thing they never take into consideration is the actual behavior of the people that they're going to put these restrictions on or these tax hikes on. And they don't take, not only do they not take into consideration the behavior of how they're going to react, but how that's going to impact the people that they swore they were going to protect. The Biden vaccine mandates were extremely racist. Why were they racist? Not because Joe Biden was going out there and using racial slurs and or anything like that. It was racist because it actually targeted minority groups disproportionately than it would have the white people. Now, everyone would have lost jobs. But what they failed to tell you on the news is that as of December 13th, only 51% of the black population was vaccinated. As far as the total workforce of the United States, black people make up 10% of the workforce. Yet, as it relates to the federal government, black people make up 18.5% of the workforce for the executive federal government. So when you start talking about the impact of policy that Biden and these Democrats are trying to implement, it does not benefit the people that they're saying it will. Why? Because trickle-down economics works. They think that only the good stuff that comes out of tax cuts will not trickle down to the lower class. It'll only stay up with the rich. Yeah, if you were going to just decrease taxes for the rich and no one else, you're right. It would not work. The problem is that when tax cuts are actually implemented, like the Trump tax cuts, and I haven't looked at the Bush ones or the ones before that, but the Trump tax cuts, he didn't cut taxes for the rich. He did slightly. In fact, actually, the rich in states that had state and local taxes actually paid a lot more in taxes. Trump's policy earned more tax revenue than prior to it. We didn't lose any tax revenue. Now, if the deficit increased, that's because maybe he was spending more money. That's a whole different conversation. But he immediately gave you everyone a higher deductible, standard deduction, and he lowered all the tax bracket percentages. He directly saved everybody of any social income class money. He directly did. Biden's plan actually will allow the rich, especially the ones in states where they have higher state and local taxes, to pay significantly less amounts of money. Significantly less. But everyone else will pay the same. Now, for the corporations, as far as they're concerned, he's going to make them pay their fair share. He's going to increase taxes on the corporations. So he's actually going to, you understand, taxable income for a corporation is different than taxable income for an individual. So a wealthy person that owns a business will be able to pay less in taxes proportionately under Biden. So he's going to give the individual business owner a massive tax break, especially if they live in or really only if they live in a state with high state and local taxes. But the business that the guy owns is going to have to pay a little bit more in taxes. But what's he going to do? He's going to pass that on to the employees and to the consumers. So really, the only person getting fucked is the lower middle class. I'd love someone to come debate me on this. Like, please bring me a leftist that does not abide by the law of trickle-down economics. They just don't fucking know they do. because they're too busy trying to convince people that trickle-down economics doesn't work. Reaganomics. Ronald Reagan had nothing to do with that. All Ronald Reagan did was use the Laffer curve and Arthur Laffer, which only shows a relationship between tax revenue and tax rates, saying that there's a happy medium. It's a very simple concept. If you have 0% tax rates, you don't earn any tax revenue. If you have 100% tax rates, you don't earn any tax revenue. Why? Because no one's going to fucking pay it. There's a happy medium where you get the most amount of tax revenue for a certain amount of, or for a certain tax rate. And when you start swaying, either way, you get more or less. That's all it's showing. The, it's a big lie that they get up there and spew. It really is. Cool Cat says, Ford paid his employees good because they wanted them to come back and buy cars, and they did. Yes, they did. That's a good point. The rich have most of their money in offshore private bank accounts, so they dodge taxes. They do. People do. That's kind of like the extremely rich. Not all wealthy people, but people, some people that are making like $500,000 a year, you could consider that being rich. They may not have some offshore accounts. They might, but the really rich do. It's the middle class that pay the most of the taxes, depending on what tax it is. If you're talking about like the payroll taxes and stuff like that, absolutely right. As far as individual income taxes, the rich actually pay the majority of the share on what the government collects in the federal income taxes. But as far as Eric, it must have been This Wop Doesn't Lie, that podcast, when I went on there and talked yesterday. I made the point. Now I work in wealth management. Okay? I do investments, all that stuff. And I work with a lot of clients of all income levels. But what's funny to me is there's a common theme among the majority of people I work with. And a lot of what I do is, and I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax professional, right? I only deal with taxation like on investments and stuff. But a lot of what we do investment-wise, we take taxes into consideration, and we don't want them to pay taxes. We try to do certain strategies and accounts and blah, 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 because they don't want to fucking pay. The majority of time, when you get above a certain amount of income, you're looking at tax write-offs. There are businesses that go out and buy something stupid for the business because they don't want to pay taxes. They would rather spend the money on something that maybe the business doesn't even need, but they could, bring it in, whatever it may be, and deduct it because they don't want it to go to the government. And I'm all for it. I'm just saying that if you think that people are not going to find ways around tax legislation, you're crazy. There's a negative correlation in regards to raising taxes and getting more tax revenue. It doesn't work. You actually get less tax revenue proportionately when you raise taxes on people because they find ways not to pay it, especially the rich. So, the only way they will ever be able to truly get the tax revenue that they think they're going to get, that they want to get after hiking taxes, is if they eliminated any kind of tax write-off. If they narrowed the tax legislation down to completely down to this, it would be a one-page deal, and it says, if you're a corporation, we're taxing all revenue after expenses such as payroll and operating costs. We're taxing all revenue after that 25% or whatever it may be. No other loopholes, no other write-offs, nothing. They would have to eliminate everything, every bit of the tax code and say, this is what it is. You bring money in, you pay 25%. You can dodge taxes with crypto. I'm not getting into that right now, cool guy. But and the same thing with individual income taxes. That's what they would have to do. They would have to say, whatever you bring in, whatever shows up on that 1099 or on that W-2, you're going to pay 10% of or 20% of or 30% of. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's the only way that they will ever go and get all the tax revenue they think and force people to pay taxes. And you could never do that because you'll have a freaking war on your hands. Because people already don't like paying taxes. When you have a tax code that's extremely complicated like ours is, There's always loopholes. There's always going to be ways to deduct the taxes. What's up, Mr. A? Yeah, he shows up fashionably late. Uh, Eric, I've been over on the Facebook thing, so I haven't been able to get to some of these comments you've been leaving. Um, okay, so what we'll do, we're going to go ahead and shut it down then. I believe, yeah. We'll go ahead and shut this down. So for you guys on Facebook, I appreciate you watching. Share the show, like the show, please. Go subscribe. Go check out the federalreport.com. That's where I'm writing my articles. That's my website. You know, and you know, we'll be back on maybe tomorrow, but we will definitely come in Tuesday. Again, we have Mark Paquita coming on the show. I hope I just said that right. Ohio senator candidate that we're going to interview and talk about a lot of the problems going on. Really, Mr. A, do you know that? Do you know him? Are you aware of him at all? Or Mark Paquita? He's. Oh, he said no. He said no. So he is running for Senate in Ohio. So we'll have him on Tuesday. Yep. Now, again, I have to figure out how I'm going to get his audio onto Podbean. If I'm going to do a live show, I'm definitely going to be live on Facebook. So you guys can come check that out. But I'll have to figure out the other aspect of it. I'm not trying to make it too complicated for him. Right? I don't care what I got to do. But if I have him, downloading all these apps and stuff, I don't want to do that. So I'll get it figured out. Again, be sure to check in tomorrow. And we're out. Thanks, guys.